Hello everyone, welcome back to the Broken Quill. I'm James A. Moores, and welcome to part 2 of a 3-part series looking into narrative elements of Death Stranding, the Japanese video game by Hideo Kojima. For those of you who haven't seen the first part of this series, the link is in the description. I recommend watching that first, but you don't have to. If you're interested in the use of particular imagery in this game, go ahead and check it out. This series is just my opinion. I know, usually I speak from a place of authority, but for these videos it's just us talking about an interesting piece of Japanese literature. We'll be looking at the environmental storytelling found in the game. I'm a little conflicted about this. I feel this part of the game isn't always consistent, so we'll be looking at how I feel it works in the game, as well as how I feel it could be better. So let's talk about what exactly is environmental storytelling. Well, the name says most of it. It's storytelling, and we get through environmental cues. Games often get concerned about this, which is a little funny. Most games, movies, or even novels will not trust their audience to read the story in the environment. Have you ever had a character stand in front of you? Maybe you're at a gate of a ruined castle and they will stare into the camera or grab the main character and declare, "Look, this castle is now in ruins, but once it was a magnificent castle. How majestic it was. But now it is destroyed and ruined." I know, I sometimes roll my eyes at that, and I'm sure some of you do too. Whoever's describing what's in front of us is talking to us. They want us to notice things, to get with the program and pay attention. In good environmental storytelling, the world tells a story just by its mere existence. Our view is drawn to something. A good cinematographer will highlight things in a scene to bring our attention to it, to focus us in on it. So let's explore this through the lens of Death Stranding. Overall, and in general, I find the environmental storytelling in Death Stranding to be really good. There are a few instances where it doesn't work, and that's more about a generalized storytelling motif than it is about specific instances. But first, let's talk about how the player is drawn towards good methods of environmental storytelling. As I said before, this is about how our attention is drawn to it, and Death Stranding is nothing but drawing our attention. Let me give a brief overview to those who haven't played it, and for those of you who have watched it. This might help a little in understanding how this game works. In specific genres, Death Stranding is a third-person action shooter. A lot of reviews have struggled to define a genre for this game, and that's because the actual shooting takes up very little of the game's content. By all definition, this is a walking simulator. And while most walking simulators are good with environmental storytelling, there is something specific that Death Stranded is doing, which brings this particularly into focus. And that is the fact that you trip, teeter, fall down, trudge, and collapse. You may ask, how does a game mechanic about hauling boxes on a topsy-turvy avatar make for good storytelling? Well, it's simple. In the beginning of the game, you are given a treacherous climb up and down over rocks from high up on a mountain, over a stream and a river. Not much cargo, just you and a difficult climb. You might say to yourself that this must be trying to knock me over, and I think it is. Or being taught something. Pay attention to where every foot falls, or you'll crash face first into the mud. Watch for grass, watch for water, watch for snow, watch for rocks. Keep an eye out for those loose boulders, those small cliffs, the way a rise slopes, and while you're doing all that, plan your route. Stare ahead of you, create markers on a map, but you need to watch the landscape. If you don't, then you'll be flat on your ass. By the time you've finished this prologue-ish section, and I say prologue-ish because this game is always teaching you things, you're given a walk through a city. This city seems old. It's out of place amongst the futuristic walls and distribution center. We start to learn about this world. While we are in the future, we are some time from when the apocalypse occurred, the titular Death Stranding. Humanity's resources are being used to create specialized equipment, not rebuilding old crumbling buildings. We go under old roadways, and even though it's basically a straight shot, we lose ourselves among the ruins. This will be a theme for the game, but this is a reprieve from the earlier watch the ground moment. This is a watch the world around you moment, and the game will move back and forth between these two storytelling methods. Once we get out of the city, once we get our first delivery, the world starts to open up to us, and we get something a bit less linear. We are greeted with an open plain, a valley, rivers, and a mountain. We are to carry a body over a plain and up a hill. Fun! The body sways dangerous, forcing us to have move slower, to grip the reins a little tighter both metaphorically and literally as the straps of our backpack steady ourselves. The music starts. A band named Low Roar belts out a deeply moving hit, and the camera pulls back. Wait, the music starts? There wasn't any music before this point, not one chord, so how can the music be a part of environmental storytelling? Well, that's easy. It's not the music that's important, it's the lack of it. The fact that there is no ambient music not only makes the brief moments of music all the more impactful, but it forces us to listen, to hear the lack of birds, the lack of animals. In the opening, we've seen how the timefall rain kills animals. It pushes life away from it. So here, the storytelling of silence shows us a world of death, a world of pain, and we're forced to cross it. If you want to cross it, you need to stare at it. You need to plan your journey. When the music is playing and the camera pulls out, the game wants you to see the vistas, look out over the plain, and focus on the majesty of this dying world. You can see the beach and mud to your right, the rivers slashing across the land, and the great mountains in the distance that is your destination. The music heightens this. It forces you to take stock in it. These moments of cathartic take your breath away, and you will find yourself slowing down to enjoy the music and take in the visuals. We get these moments at the top of mountains, looking down upon a valley, upon a city. We gaze back and forth across the landscape, and since we've just fought our way through an army of BTs, blistering torrential timefall rain, pulled ourselves through mud, dirt, and over jagged rock, we catch our breath and just look. When we start moving again, when the terrain turns from a plain with rarely a stone back to the dirt and the mud, music stops. We look back down to the ground. We watch it. We pay attention. At this point, we've learned what the game has taught us to do. To watch the ground. To watch the surroundings. They're not just there for gameplay. They are there for story writ large in mud, grass, and snow. What is the story of the land? Well, we've already been introduced to it. Let's walk through it. As Sam Porter Bridges, we are tasked with linking up the vast vestiges of humanity. These are small underground bunkers with a few occupants or vast underground cities. We don't really get to go into any, so we never know how expansive these are. But as we move through the world, we are shown areas of grass. These areas of life are broken up by splotches of death, most of them congregating around places of human life or human death. There are a few exceptions to this. The engineer, for one. The grass comes right up to it, and though this is one of the problems I mentioned before, it's not a full deal breaker. Most places surrounding areas of human life are covered in death and decay. The grass gives way, the warm boughs of sand give way and are replaced by black mud. This is the tar of the BTs. It is the filth that humanity brings to a place. Death in places of life. A world turned upside down. Areas of rain are filled with dead or dying plants. Grass gives way to mud, and black soil bubbles up from the ground. It's a mess of death. Rivers, which should pulse with reeds and grass, are filled with dark, foreboding mud. Rainbows turned upside down. Again, this isn't true for the whole game. There's a beautiful marshland with rolling reeds and grasses. It's filled with human enemies. It's filled with life. The rivers and the rain don't seem to affect it. It's a strange sight, that is for sure, but perhaps I'm wrong about the message. There could be something deeper I'm not seeing. It could be a comment here about connections. People who wish to connect with the new world are filled with life, whereas those who want to keep away from it are covered in death. The engineer who happily joins up, the grass has come right up to his door, but the elder who just wants the contract and not a full connection, and the craftsman who demands a price to join the UCA, have black mud and death pushing at their doorsteps. I don't think this is uniform across the game, so I'm not sure this is fully accurate either, but it's a reading I like, even if it's not executed as perfectly as I might want. But let's talk about places of death. As we wander the world of Death Stranding, its remnants of America, we are drawn to a destroyed world. When the grass gives way to mud and rust, we find the dead clinging to the places they lived. The environmental storytelling of destroyed places is fairly common in literature. Hiding ghosts among the corpses of a fallen society is nothing new, so a lot of this will be common ground we tread. Now let's be clear. Not every encounter is heralded by this idea. There is a forest with seemingly no vestiges of ancient society, but ghosts in forests are very common in folklore and hold a specific place in Japanese mythology, so a forest full of ghosts is not out of the ordinary. The first time we see the BTs in our playthrough is near an incinerator, the place where we bring the dead to be disposed of so they cannot void out and destroy the city. So we're seeing the dead in a literal place of death. Other than a sterile warehouse field, there is little storytelling in the environment here. The same goes for the rest. BTs on a beach, BTs on a field. But after we reach our first delivery, when we're sent to go to our next distribution center, we come across something strange. The BTs inhabit a field covered in strange bumps. As we avoid the BTs, moving from bump to bump, we realize they're cars. This is an old highway. The cars all seem to be heading in the same direction, and they are being swallowed by the earth. The green grass which covers them hides what they truly are. So the BTs are rising from the bones of the old world. This theme is presented further in the game, and we start to get more and more of the old world inhabited by ghosts. We see an old factory house, again with rusted cars outside. We see an old shopping mall. All of these places covered in mud, black sludge, and ghosts, the dead returning to the places where they existed in life. Maybe even the places they died. There is nothing to tell us this is exactly what's going on, but the theming of being tethered to a place is common in this game, and something we'll be looking at in our next episode. As we go through the game, these become more and more commonplace. At first, they're simply on a field, then a set of cars, an old abandoned factory or mall, but eventually, when we reach the end of the map, they rise from an old destroyed city. It's a small city, a suburb of some larger place, but when we reach the snow-capped mountains, we see the true bones of a ruined world. We come over hill, trudging through the snow, and there it is. A metropolis laid out before us. Skyscrapers, half swallowed by the rising walls. We trudge between the skyscrapers and the ghosts, hover in the windows. Finally, at the end of our journey, we enter a city not hidden by any grass, mud, or snow. And here, at the furthest point of our journey, is simply ruin and death. The BTs so thick they have massed into undulating squid-like balls that chase and swarm at us, the old world like a cancer, giving rise to monstrous things. I don't think the environmental storytelling is as good as it could be in this game, but I definitely think it's something that is done better than a lot of games. For a thing so obsessed that you stare at the ground, it's good. They give you something there to read. In the end, I'd like to bring this back to literature. I'm sure a lot of you are interested in how this can be used in your writing. I would say, trust your audience. If you're describing a scene, describing an environment, put enough descriptors in there to get across a message. Make the world itself breathe your themes, and trust your audience to see it. They may not, but pointing it out will probably not make for a better story. Instead, they'll feel you're just hitting them over the head with it. I hope you enjoyed this second episode in the series. Next time, we'll be looking at ropes, knots, and the ties that bind, theming in Death Stranding. I hope you'll join me again, and remember, you're always welcome here at the Broken Quill. Thank you most kindly. Comment, like, subscribe, hit the bell, and I look forward to seeing you here again.